Hey everyone, sorry I'm kind of a mess at the moment, but I was just watching some reviews, or rather comparisons between the Motorola Xoom and the iPad 2. Now, some of these reviews are pretty fair, but the majority of them, from what I'm seeing, are just not, I don't want to say they're not telling the truth, but, they'll tell most of the truth throughout the review, but then at the end they'll say that the iPad 2 is clearly the winner in, as far as which tablet is the best. So there's some things I kind of want to go through. Now, one of the things that is used against the Xoom and Honeycomb, which is the operating system version of Android that it's using, are the apps. A lot of people are saying that the iPad has 65,000 or whatever apps, while Android and Honeycomb, as far as tablets go, only has like 150. Well, that's true. However, when you give that to the iPad as a win, you're missing out on a few things. For example, that Android, the way the apps are written, the fragmentation of Android has actually been an advantage to the tablet infrastructure, being that the apps are already configured for different screen sizes and resolutions because there are so many phones out there with different screens, bigger screens and smaller screens. So when you run an app on the Xoom, you're going to find that it's not going to look... It's going to look like a tablet app because, the apps are written that way. The iPad, if you run an iPhone app that isn't specifically created for it, it's not going to look nearly as good as the apps do on the Xoom. So it could be said that the apps on Honeycomb, it basically has access to, let's say, 80% of the apps that are already out there, not including the apps made specifically for tablets. Now, one thing that they also get into is the performance of each tablet. The iPad, it's extremely responsive, but it lacks the amount of features that the Xoom with Honeycomb has. So, one comparison that they always have is, switching from one screen to another, swiping, is faster on the iPad, or changing the screen orientation is faster on the iPad. Well, let's think for a second here. iOS, I think, iOS 4.3 maybe, is so simple in comparison to Honeycomb. Honeycomb is a much more graphical GUI. And really, the difference in performance is so negligible, considering that. I mean, if it takes 2 seconds for the screen orientation, I admit that's bad. 2 seconds is bad. But, that should be the least of your concerns when you are looking at the power of a tablet. Like I said, Honeycomb's just way more intense graphically than iOS is. So... And we also have to think iOS hasn't changed that much since the original iPhone. I mean, it's changed a little bit in a lot of good ways, but just it's nowhere near where Honeycomb is right now. Flash, I'm not going to get into it. Everybody knows about this. But a lot of reviewers have actually used the lack of flash on the Xoom when it first came out against the Xoom in favor of the iPad, which makes no sense because the iPad was never going to have, or iPad 2, was never going to have flash, and the Xoom now does have flash. And they haven't come back and revised their stances on it to say, well, now that it has flash, it does have a leg up on the iPad. They just still say that the iPad has a leg, is better than the Xoom, regardless. They both support HTML5 video. Only one supports flash, and that's Honeycomb and the Xoom. They go into the form factor, the physical device. The iPad 2 is lighter. That could be considered an advantage, I guess. But I'm not so sure this has anything to do with the iPad actually being better or more functional than the Xoom. A calculator is lighter than my Droid 2, but that doesn't make it better. Everyone says it's easier to hold for extended periods of time, but really if you have to worry about the extremely minimal weight difference, you should probably take some Tylenol. I don't know. So anyway, I'm reading from my notes here because I wanted to hit point by point. But after all of the the BS is gone through and dispelled, there's still quite a few reviewers saying that the iPad 2 is better than the Xoom. When all else has failed, they attribute this win to the user experience and the ease of operation. But let's really get into it here. Both tablet operating systems and phone operating systems, as far as iOS and Android are concerned, they both have icons. You hit the icons, and the application comes up. If you want to go into the browser, you hit Browser or Safari. It's no more simple than that. You can't make it simpler than that. Having more features like an app drawer doesn't make a tablet more complicated or not as easy to use. Having widgets and customizable home screens doesn't make it less easy to use. It means that after the ease of use stops mattering, like a couple of days after just regular use, basically if you're not a power user, they're saying that the iPad trumps it, and because most people aren't power users, the iPad 2 is better. But there's no difference in use at the forefront. So if you're buying a tablet just to do email and just to do web browsing, light web browsing, they're both just as easy as each other. You click browser or you click the email app, and that's all there is to it. Just that with Android and Honeycomb, after that part of the experience wears out for you, there's more you can do. You can add widgets, you can customize your home screens, you can have a more customizable, enjoyable user experience after you're done just browsing the internet. So, anyway, I hope we can all understand that the iPad 2, it's a great device. There are a lot of people who like the Apple environment. That's just what they prefer, but that doesn't make it a better device than the Xoom or a better operating system than Honeycomb. One thing I always think of is, people look at Jimi Hendrix as the greatest guitar player who ever lived, but that's not true. Just because he's famous and people like him doesn't mean he was the best. Einstein was not the smartest person ever to live. So just like the iPad 2, even though it's the most famous at the moment, a lot of people know the iOS environment, doesn't make it better. So, hope that, that kind of gets through to people. Anyways, thanks for watching.